All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my promo for my all-day workshop in Orlando. It's called Build Intelligent Solutions, SharePoint Solutions with Power Apps. So just a little bit about me real quick. My company is IW Mentor. It's an online training company, and I've been a Microsoft MVP for 15 years. I've been working with SharePoint for 20 years. I'm really old. And here are all the different ways you can get in touch with me. So I'm going to be talking about the agenda for this all-day workshop. So throughout this workshop, we're going to be creating a purchase request system. So it is a hands-on workshop where you'll have lab instructions, you'll have a tenant to log into, and you'll be following along as we learn Power Apps and build this solution together. So as we build the solution, we're going to learn all these different factors and components of Power Apps. So first of all, we'll just start with an introduction of what Power Apps is, how to get to it, what the interface, what the concepts are like, and some ideas behind things you can do with Power Apps. And then we're going to dive right into that design surface. So we'll get familiar with all the controls, all the sort of buttons all around the screen, and how to work with different controls and how it seems a little overwhelming at first. And we'll talk about just how it is pretty simple, that you have controls and properties, and just how to drop different things onto the screen and how to start building out an app. The next thing we talk about is going to be functions. So you think about Excel, think about formulas you might write in Excel. Well, it's very similar in Power Apps. A lot of the syntax is even the same. So we'll talk about how functions work in Power Apps, how they go together, what the syntax is, and different places you'd use functions, and we'll do some examples of them. And functions are very, very powerful because you can use them all together. You can combine multiple functions into one big formula. The next section is going to be all about data sources. So let me kind of just click through some of these. So I've got a couple of extra slides about data sources. So it's going to integrate with many other systems and services when you start building your Power App. So you're going to have all the different M365 apps that you work with, like SharePoint, Dataverse, even SQL, Planner, OneDrive, Teams. All the different apps are going to be able to be integrated with your Power App. So let me see, and get through to, this is what it looks like when you start building an app. So we're going to talk about all the different options. Now, once you start building an app, you'll see that a lot of the things on this screen don't necessarily make that much of a difference. But because we're going to start talking about how to get around in the app and make sure you're really familiar with what all the different concepts are before we start, like the design surface and controls like that, before we start getting into the data sources. Because the data sources are going to be really where you start getting into building forms and galleries. And so it's really important, I think, as far as the pedagogy for this workshop, to make sure that you fully understand and you're comfortable with getting around in that design surface and understanding how controls and things work before we start pulling data into it. So we're going to have a purchase request list, and we're mainly going to be working in SharePoint. So as you can see, you have a plethora, not just Microsoft things that you can connect to in a Power App, but you have even other products like Slack and Google that you can connect to. But the main product we'll be working on is going to be SharePoint. So we'll be building out that purchase request list with a form and a full app for potentially people to do purchase requests. Now, so this is where you start getting into forms and lists. And so you start connecting to data. We'll talk about how to connect to data. And again, SharePoint is going to be the main focus. So we're going to talk about how this form control is very powerful and how the SharePoint data is basically going to be displayed and going to be interacted with through the form control as people are filling out a form. And we'll talk about all different best practices and we'll talk about logic. So when you start building forms in Power Apps, you have a really powerful way of doing the most complex logic you could possibly need in a form. So when you think about just like an out of the box SharePoint form, you can't do much with logic. It's very, very limited. You have a couple of things you can do to hide and show fields and a couple of very, very rudimentary ways that you can lay out the fields in a form. But Power Apps is a blank canvas. And so we're going to go really dig into all the different logic capabilities in your form to hide and show based on different conditions, even do different colors based on different conditions, and make things required, etc. So we're going to spend a lot of time looking at that form control. We're also going to talk about throughout this workshop, we'll talk about Copilot and how Copilot can help you as you're building your app. So you're going to have the ability to add this Copilot panel over on the right side. So as you can see in this screenshot, I'm working on an app and I have a Copilot panel. So you can ask Copilot questions. So not only does Copilot have the ability to just sort of interact with it and ask questions, it's going to be in several different places throughout that Power Apps interface. Copilot will be able to help you. So for example, I have a Copilot button next to when I'm writing formulas up here. I have the ability to have Copilot help me write formulas. I have the ability to get Copilot to help me even rename controls. So we'll be sure to incorporate all the latest Copilot capabilities as we're building this app. I do like to make sure that you know how to do things and not necessarily rely on Copilot, but it is a good learning tool. It's a good way to get help and do things a little quicker. The next part we're going to get to after the forms and lists of things, we're going to talk about forms and galleries that, to show your list of purchase requests. The next thing is going to be kind of deep diving into different kinds of controls and different types of variables. And variables are going to be where it gets really powerful. But this is just an example of a few different types of controls. We have some more advanced ones like the toolbar, progress bar, and tab list that are sort of these new modern controls that make your app look very slick and professional. And so we're going to dig into how these work, which ones are used by default in forms, and which ones can kind of just you can use them to give your app a little just more polish. We'll also, again, here's just another place that we can use Copilot. So I'll be sure to highlight this through the whole course. And another thing we'll talk about is variables, different types of variables, global variables, local variables, collections, and some really powerful ways that you can use those in your apps. Another thing that's really important when you're working with SharePoint data in your Power App is the fact that SharePoint has some certain types of columns that are considered complex columns, and they require a little bit more advanced sort of a setup when you need to do things with them, like give them default values and make them more dynamic. So we're going to go into these complex column types. We're going to look at how they're structured, and we'll talk about how to do things like a cascading dropdown, like pre-populating a people picker, even doing things like getting the logged in users manager and filling out forms to have things pre-populated with maybe for an approval process where you'd want your manager's name to automatically populate. So we'll really dig into all that advanced functionality. All right, so here now I'll show you a demo of what this app looks like that we're going to be building. So first of all, this is just what it looks like when you first log in to Power Apps. When you start off, the first thing you're going to do is go to apps. So I already had this purchase request app open. So this is what we're going to be building throughout the class. So we'll have this app. I'll go ahead and preview it. And we're going to be able to fill out new purchase requests. I'll just put a couple of things in here. And we have some departments, we have priorities, and just some basic things that we'll all just have the same list that we're working from to be able to create this standard purchase request. And then we'll be able to not only have the form and logic in the form, but then we'll have the ability to have this list of requests. So this is pretty simple, pretty basic looking. I haven't done a lot to customize the way the interface looks, but you're going to learn about the concept of being able to display a list of things in a certain way and make it look, have the right columns that you need, and have even, filtering of those items that you see in the gallery or table, and then be able to tie it together. So I'm going to show you how you sort of connect this list of items to be able to click on one to go to that form, and then be able to kind of go back and forth between different items in that purchase request list. I'll also show you how easy it is to build out this, just this easy welcome screen. So we're going to use a lot of what's called these modern sort of containers in Power Apps. We're going to make use of these modern concepts, modern controls, containers, these new modern screen templates. And this app is going to be very slick and professional looking. So you'll be able to have that. I'll show you how you can export the app when we're done, take it with you, and you'll be able to have that, that login and interactivity to be able to be working on it throughout the class. We'll kind of do different, we'll go through the lab and we'll do a few things, and then we'll learn the next concept and then kind of work through that next part, like building the form, building the gallery. So yeah, I think that's